What's going on, everybody? It's Ricky with Videohomicide, back with another movie review slash recommendation. Today we're going to go back to the year 1972 to take a look at a film directed by Alan Gibson, and that film is Dracula, A.D. 1972. Fucking strange title, but this is the 7th installment in the Hammer Dracula series, man. And I gotta say, it wasn't too bad. It's very 70s, very, if you're a fan of 70s sort of exploitation-y films, you'll definitely get a lot of those types of vibes from this movie. The soundtrack is very much lifted from like a blaxploitation flick, and it's not too bad. It definitely has a very stoned moment in the beginning of the film where it's at this party. There's like people fucking under a table, there's guys getting high, and there's like all these old folks sitting around like totally just fucking terrified out of their minds about the whole situation. But I always have my little notepad thing here. So one of the first notes I put down is Cushing is back. So yes, we get Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing back together. Van Helsing, Count Dracula, awesome shit. So the beginning of the film is a flashback. Like usually these Hammer Dracula flicks, if they do a flashback, it's to an actual film. In this film, they just flash back to like this carriage chase where Van Helsing, Count Dracula, they're beating the shit out of each other on this carriage, and it ends up crashing, and the wheel, like the way that those old-timey wooden wheels go, is like all the spokes. One of the spokes impales Dracula and kills his ass dead. Van Helsing also dies right there, and then flash forward a few days where they're at Van Helsing's funeral, and this disciple of Dracula comes along, and he steals the dirt that was underneath the vanished corpse of Dracula, puts it in a jar, much like Taste the Blood of Dracula, how that blood was in the jar. Same sort of like little fucked up scientific tube, but he snatches the ring and snatches like the stake that was actually used to kill Dracula, and that comes back later on. I don't think the stake does, but the ring definitely does. So it's sort of like Taste the Blood of Dracula in a sense, where like there's these group of people that are looking for a thrill, like this fucking like LSD infested hash party is not enough for them. So one of their friends, Johnny Alucard, of course Dracula spelled backwards, he plays the guy that's like the disciple of Dracula, wants to get everybody to this church to perform the ceremony, the ritual, the satanic rites, if you will, not to spoil the next film. But he ends up getting all of his friends, including Van Helsing's great-great-granddaughter, to this place where he performs a black mass and, brings back the corpse of Dracula, kills one of the girls. It's cool because when it shows that girl's corpse later on, she's like in the rubble and she's discovered by kids, which is awesome. I love when kids are involved in horror films like that. Like if you've ever seen Assault on Precinct 13, there's a scene where this little girl is buying ice cream and then she decides to go back because it's the wrong flavor or whatever, and she just gets fucking capped, boom, shot to death by a Klaus Kinski lookalike. I'm just trying to read my fucked up writing here because I write it so small. One of my favorite parts about this, there's these two cops that are sort of trying to like, figure the situation out. Matter of fact, one thing I forgot to mention was this is the first time we're set in like a modern era. Like it's set in the 70s. So there's cars, there's car washes, there's all that stuff. There's these two cops though, but they're looking for a reason to go like bust this house up. And he says he bets a pound of dog shit there's a pinch of hash somewhere. And I just thought that was so fucking funny because I could go for a pinch of hash right now myself. There's talk of them going to do this black mass like early, like before they actually go and wake Dracula. They're just shooting the shit and talking, and this one guy has a good line. He says, "If we summon the big daddy with the horns and tail, he brings his own liquor, his own bird, and his own pot." So bird meaning like a broad. So I thought that was fucking awesome. So there's a good shot when Dracula attacks like the first victim, where her tits are covered in blood and he's just like having a fucking field day as he does. One thing about Dracula, he's the most horny fucking vampire on the planet. there's the way that they kill Dracula in this film, I gotta say, is very much out of like Platoon, or it's like out of the Vietnam War, because what Van Helsing does is he sharpens a bunch of stakes and sets up one of those traps where like you fucking fall onto the stakes and it impales you, kills you dead. And that's what happens to Dracula in this film, and it's a pretty good death. I can't lie. There's definitely worse in the Hammer horror, i.e. the fucking just the water was one that I always think back on, but it's definitely not the worst bringing him back, and not the worst him dying. I'll definitely say that. So we've only got 2 movies left, and only one more with Christopher Lee. So Satanic Rites of Dracula is the last Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee Dracula flick, and then the next one is Five Deadly Vampires, or the Legend of the Deadly I forget. I always get those movies mixed up. It's like a Hammer crossed with Shaw Brothers, so like Kung Fu mixed with Hammer. Like I don't know. It could be a match made in heaven. It's been a long time since I actually watched it. I'm gonna have to dig up the VHS tape, because I'll be honest, I don't have Dracula 72, and watching it online was a nightmare. It's so. What happened to the good old days of bootlegging and pirating, where you can just type in on Google? You could type in, like, for instance, you want to watch Dracula. You just type in Dracula 1958, 1, 2, 3, or Putlockers, and then you'll get 25 options. And if the first fucking one don't work, big deal. You go to the next one. Nowadays, they're cracking down on that shit. So I don't know, man. I'm looking forward to starting the Frankenstein Hammer flicks. I think there's only 6 of those, so that shouldn't be too bad. I've been having a good time with this, furthering my knowledge on the character of Count Dracula, and just loving Peter Cushing every fucking second. Matter of fact, the last thing I wrote on here was King Cushing. So, what can you do, man? One more time, I gotta say, my favorite thing in this whole movie was, I bet a pound of dog shit there's a pinch of hash there. 666, adios.